Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the San Martin SN0129-GC. This watch is available from skbwatches.com for €210. The regular price is €225, but you can use the discount code JM15 to get €15 off, and that will reduce the price to €210. You can also use the discount code JM15 to get €15 off any watch on skbwatches.com. So firstly, let's look at the travel case that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So the watch comes in this hardshell travel case, which has San Martin hex logo embossed on the lid. Very aesthetically pleasing, and I want to give due credit to San Martin here because they could have used the default option of a plastic or cardboard watch box. This is definitely an improvement. Previously they used plastic watch boxes. This hardshell vinyl coated travel case is better quality and more aesthetically pleasing. So the interior is fully lined with well upholstered green velour fabric to a good standard, and I'll show you the padded pillow cushion that the watch sits on. This is also fully upholstered to a good standard with green velour fabric, and I like it. I think the quality is good, and bearing in mind this is a low tier price point piece at €210. This is an example to other low tier Chinese brands of how to get packaging correct. It is good quality and it is also aesthetically pleasing at this price point. With regards to the items you get with the watch, you also get this tag. As you can see, it says San Martin on the front and San Martin on the reverse. This is the plastic warranty card with a San Martin hex, and on the reverse it's stamped by San Martin Watch Company and filled in with the reference number SN0129. Now this should also be a date of purchase, but it details the terms and conditions of the warranty. I'm pleased to report the watch is covered by a 2-year international warranty, which is very good. And this is the owner's instruction manual, clear concise diagrams. The instructions are in English and it details the operation of the movement used, which is the Seiko NH35A automatic. You also get this stainless steel 1.6mm flathead screwdriver for resizing the screw pins in the bracelet links. Nailed shank to it, nice chamfer on the end, solid 316L grade stainless steel, very well finished, nice to get this included. And lastly, you also get this spring bar tool, 2-prong fork at one end, and on the other end we have a push pin, and this is good for removing the bracelet if you want to fit a strap. Solid 316L grade stainless steel, nailed shank, very well finished, a good quality spring bar tool. Nice to get that included. So with regards to the specifications of the piece, we have a 39mm case diameter. We have a 46.6mm lug-to-lug measurement, a thickness of 13.2mm, and a lug width of 20mm. The oyster-style bracelet tapers from 20mm at the lugs down to 16mm at the 2-button push micro-adjustment clasp. The 2-button push clasp is finished to a good standard with an embossed San Martin hex emblem, which is mirror polished with a matte bead blasted background to it, so very nicely applied, and the quality of the finishing is very good because we don't have any sharp edges or burrs on the edges of the embossed hex emblem. Beautiful luster to the brush satin finishing, which is longitudinal on the body and also on the flanks, and as you can see, two flathead screws either side of the micro adjustment clasp, which are recessed slightly, so no sharp edges to the flathead screws. Beautiful luster to the brush satin finishing on the flanks, and that contrasts with the flawless mirror polishing to the beveled edges. Nicely deburred and chamfered, there's no sharp edges, doesn't have sharp corners to it, so the quality of the finishing to the micro adjustment clasp is exceptional. So we have a double dome sapphire crystal with clear AR coating on the underside, and the clear anti-reflective coating does an outstanding job of reducing the glare and the highly reflective nature of the silver mirror polished applied indices and the silver mirror polished handset. The hands are correctly proportioned. The minute hand extends all the way to the minute ticks on the chapter ring, which is silver and has a very aesthetically pleasing 3D effect to it, and the hour hand is also correctly proportioned because it extends to the applied indices. Nice attention to detail because we've got a contrasting red tip to the sweeping second hand, and also like the shape of the counterbalance, so it's very well executed but also a nice shape to the handset, and I'm pleased they haven't used the default option of using baton hands or alternatively Mercedes hands. They've come up with an original handset design. So proportions are good, length of the hands is good, and they deserve credit because often low tier Chinese brands make the mistake of undersizing the hands in proportion, and also they're too short. But these hands are the correct size and they're also the correct length. The date complication is framed with a nice silver date frame around the window, and that's very good because it complements the applied indices. Nice silver frame to the date window. Also like the quality of the printing of the text on the dial. The size of the text is correct. It's not too large or too small. The font is nice and fine and high definition. Clearly legible. It says automatic 100 meters equals 330 feet. And I like the quality of the printing. It looks sharp. Also, the printing of the black minute ticks on the chapter ring are very sharp and high definition. So it's good quality dial execution. The applied San Martin hex emblem at 12 o'clock also complements the applied indices. Now, the thing I most like about this SN0129-GC version is the white dial, which has a textured effect to it. It's got a nice 3D effect. Rather than being flat, and it's not a glossy enamel finish, it's got a metallic sheen to the whites which almost looks silver, and that complements the 3D effect of the Rehorts, as you can see, which is the chapter ring, because the Rehort is marked with the minute ticks, and the chapter ring is very well executed because the colour tone of the silver is close to the white metallic finish to the dial, and the textured finish is like waves of sand, and I really like the wave of sand finish to it because the lines are high definition, but they give it a nice 3D effect and they catch the lights. When you tilt the piece at an oblique angle, you can see the wave sand dial catches it beautifully. It's just a very beautiful dial colour and also good to look at from any angle. The bezel is one of my favourite aspects. Solid 316L grade stainless steel. Nice mirror polished chamfer to it, so no sharp edge to the top edge, and it's got a brushed satin finish edge to it. And then on the top edge we've got a nice chamfer which is large, which is mirror polished, and on the top of it we've got a sunburst finish to it, and I really like the way the sunburst brushed satin finishing to the bezel catches the light. It refracts the light rather than reflecting it, and it's just an interesting contrast in finishing because we've got the radial or sunburst brushed satin finishing to the top of the bezel, then the mirror polished chamfer to it, and then on the sides we've got brushed satin finishing to it. So it's just a very well finished bezel, no sharp edges to it, and I like the way the double dome sapphire crystal projects above it. So as you can see, look at the edge of the double domed sapphire crystal. You can see there's a slight lip or a slight edge which projects above the top of the sunburst finished bezel, and I love the way that catches the light. These are the kind of attention to details one doesn't see on low tier pieces. So very aesthetically pleasing. Proportions are very good, both on the crystal and also the bezel. I'm pleased they didn't use a tall top hat boxed crystal on this because that would add significant thickness. This is 13.2mm, which is acceptable, but had they used a boxed top hat crystal, that would have made it well over 13.2. So I think they've made the correct decision by using a low profile double dome sapphire crystal rather than a boxed top hat profile crystal. So let's look at the end links and the bracelet. Female pivoted end links are the correct choice because this has a lug-to-lug measurement of 46.6, which is compact. 48mm is the sweet spot for all wrist sizes. 46.6 is slightly below that, so this will fit you whether you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist or a 7 to 8 inch wrist respectively. Had they made the mistake of using male end links, that would have extended the effective lug-to-lug measurement and meant that there was a gap beneath the tips of the lugs, and also the end link in the oyster style bracelet wouldn't articulate so well. So they've made the correct decision by using female pivoted end links for the extra articulation. Very smooth. The end link doesn't kink. It's not stiff and it articulates smoothly. Doesn't have excessive lateral play, longitudinal play, up and down play, side to side play. Tolerances are good. It's a well executed female pivoted end link. The curved profile of the end link does match the lyre lugs or twisted lugs, which are like an Amiga style or a Grand Seiko style, and I think they're very nicely profiled. The curve matches the curved profile of the lyre lugs, very well finished. Oyster style bracelet uses 1.6mm screw pins, and I'm pleased to see they haven't used the cost cutting measure of using a push pin bracelet. There's a beautiful lustre to the 316L grade stainless steel, which is brushed satin finished on the top side and the underside, and that contrasts with the flawless mirror polishing to the flanks. This is one of the best finished San Martin bracelets I have experienced. I have reviewed a plethora of San Martin pieces over the years. This is one of the best finishing. No sharp edges to the top edge or the lower edge of the flanks. The centre links in the bracelet are deburred. No sharp edges. This does not pull arm hairs. It articulates very smoothly, no stiff links, so the links do not kink. They feel very smooth, they articulate freely. I'll just check the other side for comparison. Female pivoted end link also articulates smoothly, doesn't have excessive lateral, longitudinal, side to side or up and down play. Good articulation, doesn't kink, it's not stiff. The links in the oyster style bracelet articulate smoothly, they don't kink. Doesn't rattle, doesn't have excessive play, longitudinal, lateral, side to side or up and down play. So this is well executed. And this is the benefit of them using screw pins rather than push pins, because they can tighten up the tolerances. Every link is a nice tight fit. So no sharp edges to the flanks, on the top edge, lower edge or the centre links. Doesn't pull arm hair, articulates freely, beautiful lustre to it. Flawless mirror polishing. This is an example to other low-tier Chinese brands of how to get the build quality, quality control and finishing of an oyster-style bracelet correct. The other correct decision they've made is the taper. 20-16 is perfection personified. It is the perfect taper for an oyster-style bracelet. 20 at the lugs, 16 at the micro-adjust clasp. This gives a nice smooth taper, and the proportions of a 20-16 oyster-style bracelet perfectly balance a 39mm head of the piece. So the proportions of this head of the piece and the bracelet are spot on. Right, so let's test the screw down crown execution. Solid 316L grade stainless steel crown, coin edge finished, nice chamfer to it, so no sharp edges to the tips of the coin edge teeth. It's engraved to a good standard with the San Martin hex emblem, as you can see, which is mirror polished with a matte bead blasted background to it. Quality of the engraving is high definition. So let's test the action. Absolutely silky smooth. This is sublime screw down crown execution. Silky smooth. Minimal number of turns to unscrew it fully. And this really is Tudor or Rolex or Omega level quality. That is the kind of smoothness. It is silky smooth. It's just sublime. An absolute pleasure. An example to other low-tier Chinese brands how to get screw down crown execution correct. San Martin couldn't improve upon this. This is one of the best screw down crown executions I have ever experienced on a San Martin. It's fantastic. So when it's opened, we are in the manual wind position, so one can manually wind the Seiko Caliber NH35A automatic to its maximum 41-hour power reserve. Nice medium firm resistance. One can feel the tension in the mainspring gradually building up to its maximum 41 hours. Feels very good to manually wind. It's a characteristic of the NH35A. They feel very smooth and nice firm resistance in the mainspring. So I like it. So I like manually winding the NH35A. Pulling it out to the first click position is the quick set complication. And if you look closely at the date window at 3 o'clock, you can see each day of the month clicks over with a nice positive click. And that's a characteristic of the NH35A I really like. It feels pleasant to set the dates because each day has a nice heavy index click, and I like that positive indexing. Nice, solid, loud, audible clicks, and you can really feel it click over to the next day. Feels robust and reliable, and I love the heavy indexing. It's something that Seiko do very well with the NH35A. So quick set complication works perfectly. Pulling it out to the second click position hacks the movements. If you look at the contrasting red tip to the sweeping second hand, you can see it's possible to set the time precisely to the second and hack the movements. So medium resistance to the NH35A. Feels smooth all the way through the 12 hours of rotation, both clockwise and anti-clockwise. Minimal back play in the gearing. When you rotate the crown clockwise and anti-clockwise to set the time, there is some slight back play to take up the slack in the gearing, but it's minimal and it is acceptable. The NH35A is a reliable, well-proven workhorse caliber, and the back play is acceptable because it is so robust and reliable. So it feels good. Pushing it back in, it's got a nice positive click, and that restarts the movement. You'll see the second hand begins to sweep around the dial once again at the characteristic 3 Hz sweep. Now, the negative of this being a 3 Hz movement rather than 4 Hz is the second-hand judders or stutters around the dial. I personally prefer 4 Hz movements that run at 28,800 vibrations per hour versus the 21,600 vibrations per hour of this NH35A. Because the 3 Hz sweep stutters and judders, a 4 Hz sweep is slightly smoother and it's more aesthetically pleasing, but that's the only real negative of the NH35A, which is subjective. Some collectors don't mind the stutter or judder of the 3 Hz sweep. I personally prefer the smoother sweep of a 4 Hz. So let's test screwing down the crown. Instant thread pickup. This is perfect interface between the internal thread of the stainless steel crown and the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube. So the quality control, machining and tolerances, the build quality of the screw down crown and the thread on the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube are excellent. Immediate pickups. The threads interface and pick up instantly. Minimal number of turns to screw it down fully. There are 2 rubber O-ring gaskets which provide an effective hermetic seal to 100 meters, which is strong specification for a daily wear piece. So this is perfect screw down crown execution, one of the best screw down crowns I have ever experienced on a San Martin. So let's look at the case back. Solid 316L grade stainless steel case back, concentric CNC lathe tool machining to the centre, and I like the concentric CNC lathe tool machining because it refracts the light rather than reflecting it as per a mirror polished case back. Nice flat profile to it. So what we're looking at here is correct decision after correct decision, because rather than using a large bubble back profile case back, which often so many low tier Chinese brands do, to clear the rotor on the NH35A, this has a flat centre section which is sterile. Now the benefit of it being sterile rather than engraved or using an exhibition case back is it is very flat and low profile. So it sits very close to the wrist. It gives a nice snug fit because the undercut to the flanks of the case has a nice curved profile. So the head of the piece wraps around the wrist, and the flat sterile case back also sits snug to the wrist rather than it being a bubble back case back. The circumference is also brushed satin finish to a nice standard, and the milled slots are deburred, so no sharp edges to the milled slots in the case back, and I like that they've used a sterile case back rather than engraving it. So it's very comfortable and smooth against the wrist. The comfort level and the feel good factor is good as a result. I personally prefer sterile case backs to engraved because of the smoothness. With a sterile case back, it feels very smooth against the wrist. Often with engraved case backs, the engraving feels sharp and it feels rough, it feels scratchy against the wrist and it irritates. But with a sterile case back, as per Rolex or Tudor, it feels very comfortable to wear for long periods of time, such as 8 to 12 hours per day. So proportions are good, finishing is good. The female pivoted end links are a nice tight fit to the head of the piece, as you can see. Good tight tolerances, no lateral side-to-side play, no longitudinal play, no up and down play. Nice snug fit to the female pivoted end links, and we've got conventional spring bars. So the milled slots are big enough to get a spring bar tool inside in order to retract the spring bars. So very well finished, no sharp edges, no burrs, and I like the quality of the tolerances. Now, with regards to the finishing to the head of the piece, this is some of the best case finishing I have ever seen on a San Martin watch, and as I've detailed, I have reviewed a plethora of San Martin watches over the years. The brushed satin finishing to the flanks of this case are longitudinal, and it's absolutely flawless. Nice fine grained finish, and the luster is gorgeous the way it catches the light. This is Rolex or Tudor level brushed satin finishing to the flanks. The mirror polished bevels are also finished to perfection. Nice lyre lugs or twisted lugs as per Omega or Grand Seiko, and you can see the nice large bevel runs the full length of the top edge of the flanks of the case, and it's got a lovely curved profile to it. I like the way it catches the light. They've deburred the tips of the lyre lugs very well. They don't have sharp corners or sharp tips to them. The undercut to the flanks of the case also has a nice mirror polished bevel. Now this is something that San Martin really deserve credit for. They have enhanced their case finishing, because often with San Martin watches they have a problem that they tend to finish their bracelets and also the head of the piece, the undercut to the flanks, with a crisp edge which can feel sharp. But with this piece they've actually machined a large bevel to the undercuts to the flank of the case, and they then mirror polish the machined bevel. So this is just isn't a chamfer to deburr the sharp edge. They've actually machined a bevel, and the bevel is mirror polished to further enhance it. And just look at the quality of the mirror polishing on the bevel on the undercut to the flank. It's perfection personified. No sharp edges whatsoever. This should be done on all San Martin watches, because this large mirror polished bevel means it completely deletes any sharp edge. So when you're wearing this on wrist, it enhances the feel good factor, the comfort level, because you don't have any sharp edge on the undercut to the flank of the case. It's the same on the crown guard side. If you look at the underside to the crown guards, you can see they have this large mirror polished bevel, and the bevel flows through the undercut of the case. So the flank of the case has this nice large mirror polished bevel to it. Just bear with me, I'll get the camera to focus on it. And they've polished it to a flawless standard, so no sharp edges. They've completely deleted any burr or any sharp edge that you normally get on the undercut. It's an area that's often sharp on the undercuts of St. Martin cases. So one of the best finished head of the pieces I have seen. Every facet of the case is deburred and chamfered and beveled and mirror polished to the highest standard. This really is close to Rolex or Tudor level finishing, and I'm very impressed with it. The proportions of the crown guards are correct. They do a good job of protecting the crown from impact damage, and I like the way the crown is slightly recessed into the V cutout. Also, the mirror polishing on the tops of the lugs adds interest because it complements the mirror polished bevels, but also the mirror polished chamfer on the bezel. So it looks good, but it's also very well finished, and the proportions of this are fantastic. Right, so let's look at the micro adjustment clasp. Solid 316L grade stainless steel, milled clasp. Brushed satin finish longitudinally. Beautiful luster to it. No sharp edges to the top side, underside or flanks to the milled clasp. No sharp corners to the internals. Let's check the hinge pins. No play in the left hand hinge pin, lateral, longitudinal, up and down or side to side. Tolerances are correct. Let's check the main centre pin. No lateral, longitudinal, side to side or up and down play. So centre pin, tolerances are correct. Let's check the right one. Tight. This is fantastic. No lateral, side to side, up and down or longitudinal play. This is an example to other low tier Chinese brands of how to get the build quality, quality control and finishing and tolerances of a solid mill clasp correct. Nice tight 3 hinge pins. No sharp edges, no sharp corners, articulates smoothly. The perfect solid milled stainless steel clasp, one of the best I have seen within the low tier at €210. So, micro adjust clasp, as you can see. Nice firm resistance to the 2 button push triggers, they're well finished. I like the action. Let's look at the internals. So, we've got a ratcheting quick adjust mechanism, spring loaded trigger which you can push with your index finger or thumb, and let's extend it and see how it works. So, nice firm resistance to the trigger. You have to push it in hard with your finger so it's not going to accidentally deploy when on wrist. So we're now on full extension. So let's test clicking it back in. Nice, heavy, audible clicks. I like the firm ratcheting mechanism. It's not going to accidentally deploy and you're not going to accidentally push it in either. It takes real force. Nice, heavy clicks. I like the ratcheting mechanism. So, we've got one link of adjustment. We're now on the minimum. Let's deploy it and see how it deploys. Pushing it in has a nice firm resistance to the trigger. Just bear with me and I'll do it with my finger. That's it. So one full link of extension. I'm just going to try pushing it back in once again and just see how it feels. I like the loud audible clicks. It feels solid. So full link of adjustment, and I'm just going to press it in with my thumb and just see how smoothly it deploys. So it articulates very well. You need to give it a hard push with your thumb or finger because it is very heavily sprung loaded. If you look at this trigger, which has push engraved in it, you have to really push it in hard. And it has 5 clicks of micro adjustment, which are heavy and ratcheted, but it does feel good because it's not going to accidentally move. It doesn't push in or pull out accidentally. You really have to push in the trigger hard. And I like the firm resistance, the heavy clicks. And when you deploy it, you really have to push in the trigger hard to get it to deploy, and then it does deploy. Now, the benefit is the tolerances are good. It doesn't rattle. The end link in the bracelet is a good snug fit inside the body of the micro adjustment clasp, so it doesn't have excessive lateral, longitudinal, side to side or up and down play. It's very well done. Nice heavy clicks. This is very satisfying to use. The quality is good. I like the quality of the finishing, the quality of the internals, and also the quality of the solid mill portion of the clasp. This is a good micro adjustment clasp. The proportions are also good. So everything about it is well done. And at this price point, to get this kind of quality of micro adjustment clasp, San Martin deserve credit. This is €210 and it is an outstanding micro adjustment clasp. I think they deserve credit. No sharp edges to it, doesn't have sharp corners, quality of the luster is beautiful, mirror polishing is beautiful. Right, so I'll give you a wrist shot and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Snap shut with a nice positive click. Proportion of the clasp is quite large. Now that's something to note. If you are a collector with a smaller wrist of 6 to 7 inches, you may find the length of the clasp and also the width of the clasp and how proud it sits from the wrist, the thickness of it. You might find the proportions to be slightly large if you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist, but if you have a larger 7 to 8 inch wrist, you'll enjoy the wrist presence, but also you'll find that it's not too long for your wrist and not too wide. Doesn't sit too proud from the wrist, it's not too thick. It will easily slip underneath the shirt cuff if you wear business shirts, but due to the proportions, the curve of it, and also the length, I would say it's best suited to collectors with a 7 to 8 inch wrist. If you have a 6 to 7, you may find it slightly too long and therefore it overhangs your wrist too much. Something to note, best suited for larger wrists, but the wrist presence of this piece is fantastic. 39mm. It gives a nice wrist presence, but it doesn't feel top heavy and it feels very well balanced due to the perfect taper. 20 to 16 is perfection personified, and I love the luster of the brushed satin finishing to the oyster style bracelet. Female pivoted end links articulate very well. Look how snug the end link in the bracelet pulls to my wrist. This is the benefit of using female pivoted end links. We're looking at a correct decision here. Had they used male end links, there would be a gap underneath the end of the oyster bracelet. The curved undercut to the head of the piece means that it wraps around the wrist. It doesn't sit on top of the wrist like a slab of 316L grade stainless steel. So the lyre lugs curve around the wrist very well. The female pivoted end links pull the end link snug to the wrist. So the comfort level is 10 out of 10. The feel good factor is 10 out of 10. I love the way the large mirror polished chamfer on the stainless steel bezel catches the light, and the lip or the edge of the double dome sapphire crystal catches the light. Just absolutely gorgeous. So very comfortable to wear because it is 148 grams. Now bear in mind, this is with all the links in the oyster style bracelet, and it will easily fit up to an 8.5 inch wrist. I'm on the maximum extension in the micro adjustment clasp. This is its absolute maximum. So it will fit up to an 8.5 inch wrist. You're going to be removing several links. That will reduce the heft below 148 grams to circa 140 grams or less. Anything below 150 grams is the sweet spot for comfort if you're going to wear a piece as a daily wear piece for 8 to 12 hours per day. So, although it does have a rather large proportioned micro adjustment clasp, which does add significant heft, the bracelet and the head of the piece balance perfectly. 39mm is nice wrist presence. 13.2 is slightly tall. 13mm or below is the sweet spot to easily fit underneath a shirt cuff if you wear business shirts. At 13.2 it's just marginally above the 13mm sweet spot, but it's acceptable because we do have that double domed sapphire crystal, which is very aesthetically pleasing. Legibility of the dial is very good. The mirror polished handset and applied indices contrast very well with the sand wave dial. So it's a white dial, but it has a metallic finish to it, which almost looks silver. And the Rehorts, which is the chapter ring, it has a silver metallic finish to it with a nice sheen. So although it is a highly reflective dial and Rehort, it is very legible. The proportions of the handset are good and the contrast of the indices and the handset are very good. AR coating works very well. When I tilt the piece at an oblique angle, it reduces the glare. I absolutely love the lyre lugs, the twisted lugs, and also the mirror polished bezel. The way they catch the light, the mirror polished bevels on the edge of the case and also the mirror polished chamfer, they really complement each other. Just a fantastic looking piece. Feel good factor is good, comfort level is good. I like the sterile case back, which is very flat and low profile, because look how close the curved head of the piece wraps around the wrist, and it sits very close. So at 13.2 it feels low profile and balanced. Feel good factor of this watch is really good. It feels comfortable, and I like the bracelet as well. Articulates very smoothly, but also the taper, 20 to 16. It just is the perfect proportions for the 39mm head of the piece. So let's do a lume test, and we'll see how the lume performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, it has not disappointed. So this uses BGW X1, which is slightly different to BGW9, which you'll all be familiar with. X1 gives 60% more performance than BGW9. It really is the ultimate. X1 adds an exciter to the BGW9, which is more white. The exciter glows more brightly than the blue tone of BGW9. So BGW9 mixed with X1 is BGW X1. It's a combination of the two, so you're getting the very best of both superluminovas. BGW9 has a characteristic blue tone, which is very aesthetically pleasing. X1 has a whiter, bright tone to it, so the exciter in X1 really is the ultimate. It's the maximum brightness you can get from an exciter in superluminova. By combining the two to BGW X1, you're getting the blue tone of BGW9, but you're getting the white exciter of X1. And it works very well, as you can see, because we're looking at an incredibly bright version of BGW9 with the BGW X1. The blue tone on the applied indices and the handset perfectly matches. So they deserve credit, because in daylight conditions, San Martin have got the lume tone correct. It looks white on the indices and it looks white on the handset. The lume doesn't look cream on the indices and white on the handset, for example. Often low-tier Chinese brands have a problem with matching the colour tone of the superluminova used on the indices and also used on the handset. For example, the indices would look cream and the hands would look whiter. But in daylight conditions, the indices and the hands on this piece look white, and in the dark you can see the blue tone of the BGW X1 is perfectly matched. The same blue tone on the hands, same blue tone on the dial. So one can clearly differentiate between the hour and minute hand because the minute hand is longer. Nice large plots, nice large area of BGW X1 on the hands. And I really think they've done a great job here, because we're clearly looking at 5 to 6 layers on the indices and 5 to 6 layers on the hands. It's not fading whatsoever. This is the benefit of using X1 as the exciter in the BGW9 to create BGW X1. It is a combination of the greatest superluminova. And San Martin deserve credit, because X1's more expensive. It increases the production costs. So they haven't cut any corners with regards to the performance and the application. This is 5 to 6 layers, and X1 really is the top quality superluminova money can buy. Fantastic performance. It could not be improved upon. Symmetry of the dial is good. They've made the correct decision by citing the date complication at 3. And I like the proportion of the applied indices, because they allow for plenty of layers, 5 to 6 layers of depth of BGW X1 to be applied. And it's very, very good performance. Right, so let's discuss the movement used. You'll all be familiar with the Seiko NH35A automatic. It's made in Malaysia and it's been in service since 2011, so it's a reliable, well-proven workhorse Malaysian-made movement. It has 24 joules and it runs at 21,600 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 3 Hz. It has hand winding and hacking, which is used for complications, and a quick set dates complication, which I've demonstrated works very well. 41-hour power reserve is very good. The stated accuracy is -20 to +40 seconds per day, so rather wide accuracy range. However, I'm pleased to report that San Martin are doing an excellent job of regulating the NH35As they're using. This one is running consistently at +5 seconds per day, which is actually chronometer accurate. So +5 is well within the stated -20 to +40 per day, and definitely satisfactory. +5 from an NH35A is excellent accuracy. So the correct choice at this price point, it's a reliable, well-proven workhorse movement. Accuracy is good at +5. The reliability is good. It's been in service since 2011 with no quality control, build quality or reliability issues reported. It is a very robust movement. So I like everything about it. The hand winding feels good. Quick set complication has nice heavy indexing. It's a pleasure to manually wind, and I like the reliability of it above all else. It's a robust movement. +5 is good enough. So the negative is that often with an NH35A, one needs a deep rehort because it has a relatively tall hand stack height on the cannon pinion. But San Martin have addressed this because they haven't made the rehort too deep and they've made it into a chapter ring with the black Minute 6. And the chapter ring doesn't look too deep. So the dial isn't sunk too deep beneath the flat sapphire crystal and the legibility is good as a result. So they've got the proportions of the chapter ring very good. It works very well. The dial has a nice textured finish, but it's not too far away. The other thing they've got correct, and I want to give them credit here because the problem with textured dials is often they're very thick. And when they have a date window, because of the thickness of the dial, the date wheel is sunk very deep beneath the thick dial, and that creates a shadow permanently around the dates. And also that's compounded when they add a frame around it with a 3D effect. It creates a permanent shadow. But if you look at the date complication, you can see the white date wheel with black Arabic numeral is clearly legible. You can clearly read it's the 8th of the month. So they haven't sunk the date wheel too deep beneath the dial. The dial isn't too thick despite having this waves of sand texture to it, which is very aesthetically pleasing. So the legibility is good, the proportion of the date window is good, and the rehort, which has become the chapter ring because they've marked it with Minute 6, isn't too deep, which is often the characteristic of NH35A. So they've got everything correct. I wouldn't change anything about this piece. This is the perfect daily wear piece. The quality of the finishing to the head of the piece, the bracelet, the micro adjustment clasp, the bezel, the crown and the case back are all 10 out of 10. This is one of the best San Martin watches they have ever produced. The finishing is 10 out of 10 throughout. It is an example to other brands of how to get it correct. Everything about it is just finished to perfection. So, lastly, I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch meets 2 criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. So €210 is the price point in the low tier. Yes, this is unquestionably excellent quality, and yes, it is unquestionably excellent value at €210. This cannot be beaten at the price point. In terms of build quality, quality control, finishing and specification, the X1 Superluminova is fantastic, and also the micro adjustment clasp is fantastic. So those 2 things alone are reason to justify the €210. I'm going to declare it a champagne watch for lemonade money, and I'm going to highly recommend it to you for consideration. I hope you've enjoyed my review of the San Martin SN0129-GC. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.